It's a celebration here in the studio because the Cyberwork with Infosec podcast is a winner. Thanks to the Cybersecurity Excellence Awards for awarding us a Best Cybersecurity Podcast gold medal in our category. Yeah. We're celebrating, but we're giving all of you the gift. We're once again giving away a free month of our Infosec Skills platform, which features targeted learning modules, cloud-hosted cyber ranges, hands-on projects, certification practice exams, and skills assessments. To take advantage of this special offer, for CyberWork listeners, head over to infosecinstitute.com/skills or click the link in the description below. Sign up for an individual subscription as you normally would. Then, in the coupon box, type the word CyberWork, CYBERWORK, no spaces, no capital letters, and just like magic, you can claim your free month. Thank you once again for listening to and watching our podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you coming back each week. So enough of that, let's begin the episode. Welcome to this week's episode of the Cyberwork with Infosec podcast. Each week, I sit down with a different cybersecurity industry thought leader, and we discuss the latest trends, how those trends are affecting the work of Infosec professionals, while offering tips for those trying to break in or move up the ladder in the cybersecurity industry. Today's guest, Ken Jenkins, currently serves as the Chief Technology Officer of Bylight's Cyberspace Operations Vertical and leads the organization's EmberSec team. He brings more than 24 years of information technology and cybersecurity experience to his work in red teaming, penetration testing, threat hunting, threat emulation, incident response, and systems engineering. Ken is also a decorated combat veteran and retired soldier. His active duty responsibilities covered operations and defense of DoD networks and battle command systems. Some of his assignments included a variety of combat units, the Army's Criminal Investigation Command, Army Cyber Command, United States Cyber Command, and the National Security Agency. Ken regularly competes in capture the flag competitions and is a technical mentor to the Cyber Patriot Program. He earned his BS in technical management from DeVry University and holds over 30 commercial certifications, including CISSP, OSCP, and many more. Ken, thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to Cyberwork.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm always humbled to be invited on shows or for interviews. Thank you.
Well, great. Well, I hope we have a good time today. So I want to start out the way I start out with all of my guests and ask you a little bit about your tech and security journey. How did you first get interested in cybersecurity? Did that come during your military service, or have you been a lifelong tech and computer fanatic?
No, it did. I've always had a thing for taking things apart and messing with widgets and seeing how things work. But I think my path was a little bit more opportunistic than like a planned thing I wanted to do when I grew up. I initially joined the military and I worked on tracked vehicles. So I Bradley fighting systems, MLRS, like track vehicles, really cool thing, right? When you're growing up, as a kid, you see those things, but I knew very quickly that I was wanting to do something else. So the Army had this program that will allow you to leave one understrength critical career field, but only to go to another. So the IT, what we call the Army Signal Corps. So I was able to transition to that, and that's kind of where my IT journey took off. So I was fortunate to work in some really cool units in the military. We were started off very early routing traffic over circuit switching and satellites and line of sight radios and even RF radios. So I quickly was able to go to train in industry with Cisco. So I learned the whole basically network and switching routing at a very advanced level within for WIN engineering and providing large scale communications. So I did that in Korea. I joined the Army's First Striker Brigade, and those are very expeditionary comms. So you had to move very quickly, and keeping communications up was key. So I did that for a good 5 years after I reclassed, after I changed jobs from being a mechanic, and then I moved into I got fortunate enough to get selected into the Army's Warrant Officer Program. So the Army's Warrant Officer Program, it's divided up over 20 technical disciplines within within the Army, and they basically send you off and retrain you, and you become the Army's expert in whatever field you're in. So mine was IT and communications. So I was able to train with Microsoft, with Cisco, but lots of battle command systems. Worked with defense contractors that would deploy systems to the military. So that was a lot of fun. It moved very quickly. But after I became a warrant officer, my first assignment was at the Army's Criminal Investigations Command. I knew very little about the organization's mission. They pretty much respond to a felony investigation, anything sensitive to the government. While I was there, I noticed that the we had these criminal crimes or computer crimes coordinators that would respond to cyber events. And of course, we weren't calling it cyber then. It was more like, did somebody commit fraud? Was there felony level investigations, anything to do with computers. So I quickly learned how to conduct forensics with the computer crimes coordinators. And, I learned this from supporting them. They needed like massive servers built. They needed like computing power. They needed analyst workstations, things like that. So I really started learning about the law enforcement side of forensics, which prepped me very well for the more cybersecurity relevant forensics that we do these days, and like security operations centers and whatnot. So after I left there, I was fortunate enough to get accepted into the Army's first cybersecurity career field. So I changed my job once again, and it just took off from there. I mean, I had the deep comms background, and I had the support to law enforcement and doing some really cool forensics. And matter of fact, while I was at CID, we responded to the shooting at Fort Hood.
Wow.
There was a lot of forensics work that had to be done.
Sure.
The buildings where that occurred, and that was a huge effort, and I really enjoyed working with the agents on that work. Fast forward, I finished that course. The course I got sent off to I attended with SANS. So they put us through 7 SANS courses. And that was like a kick in the mouth, because SANS training is very, very difficult, very relevant, good hands-on, lots of labs. You're being taught by industry experts. SANS doesn't just have instructors. Like to be able to teach there, you have to be a practitioner in the field, and the depth that they teach at was nothing I'd been exposed to previously. So I got through that program, and I was able to get assigned to the SWA Cyber Center in Kuwait. So the SWA Cyber Center was, at the time, it was known as the Computer Network Defense Service Provider for all of CENTCOM. So the CENTCOM AOR, which is one of the largest areas of operation within DoD. So we're responsible for the daily defense of those units that were operating out of Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi, Egypt, and Iraq. So a massive sensor grid. I mean, at the time, if you think of a capability that existed, we had it. It was tremendous. All the way from IDS, IPSs to name a vendor that's out there that had a cool product. We had it.
Yeah.
We had reverse malware engineering guys. We had a robust incident response team. I don't think a lot of folks give the military credit on us, but we had this, and it was I was the first like cyber defense guy assigned out there from the Army to work with a lot of our contractors and civilians, and it was really a great learning experience, and it really catapulted what occurred afterwards. So we handle some pretty significant intrusions, particularly nation states. I mean, there's always insider threats, things like that. I mean, when you're operating across those many countries, you're going to have threats coming in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it was a good time. Lots of incident response. You wouldn't believe the sophistication that adversaries are operating with. While we were trying to defend unclassified networks, classified networks, all the way up to top secret.
Yeah.
There's activity on all of them.
Okay.
Whether it's insider threats or whether it's
Right.
just unknowns, anomalies. So after I left there, I went to the National Security Agency, which was an awesome assignment. I was a mission director at the NSA's Blue Team, and we merged with the Hunt. So we're responsible for intrusion detection, intrusion analysis, incident response, and vulnerability assessments for government for government agencies. So wide exposure to lots of threats, lots of adversary activities, and how to do vulnerability assessments the right way. I mean, we were well organized, well funded, and the talent pool that we had there was like no other I'd ever worked with. I mean, I pinch myself every day at be able to be the director of those operations.
Wow.
So I did that for a few years, and I went over to the NSA's Red Team, and the Red Team is a really cool organization to work in. It feels like you're in a military organization. And the reason I say that, because the way they operationalize their operations. So, they're responsible for doing penetration testing and red teaming of U.S. government agencies. So, getting to operate in that environment was really cool. Just from the way we organized the organization to the way we conducted our operations, it was very similar to what I was used to in the Army. So, I was getting kind of close to the end of my 20-year career there. And I hit 19 years and I got this itch that I just wanted, I wanted to retire. I wanted to move on to the next thing.
Right.
It was a great experience. There was no downside. I loved it all the way to the end. I mean, I felt like I was sprinting all the way to the end. But the larger Army and the Cyber Mission Force was being stood up, the Army Cyber Branch. So I spent significant time like really helping create that structure, contributing to create that structure, the training pipelines, the positions, the vision of the organization, how they would conduct offensive and defensive cyber. So I really enjoyed my time there, but my itch was needed more scratching. So I went ahead and retired, and I was fortunate enough to join a company called IronNet Cybersecurity. Very comfortable feeling going there. Matter of fact, our CEO was General Keith Alexander, who was the former director of the NSA. So lots of mentorship there, and I started the Red Team at that organization, and then I stood up the Solutions Engineering and Services teams. And at that point, I was promoted to VP, and then I moved on to ByLite. So I've been here roughly 15, 16 months now. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for the Cyberspace operations vertical, and I also run the EmberSec team. So the EmberSec team is pretty much focused on technical, managed, and GRC services. So it's a really deep and wide breadth of expertise we have on the team. I really enjoy what we do.
Okay, so you gave me a great timeline of all the different positions you've had. Most of them were clearly in the military or government sector. But could you tell me a little bit, sort of in an umbrella way, like what did your time working on cybersecurity and cyber defense in the military teach you methodically or procedurally that you've been able to bring into the private sector?
Yeah, so I think one of the things we were good at in the military is understanding the threats and the adversary's capability, and we did that through different forms of intelligence collections, previous experience, sharing with our partners, things like that. So really understanding our threat model, understanding what we need to do to reduce the risk from that threat model that we're up against. So that was one thing. So that can help you prepare a proactive defense plan, but also how we operationalize cybersecurity on active, just not active, but within the government. We ran it as a military operation. I mean, it wasn't a mundane task. It was, hey, cyber is a war fighting domain. And as such, you have to be proactive. You have to plan, current, future operations. I really like that aspect. And, I've been fortunate enough to work with some major energy companies, banks, and it's the little minor things like that I pick up at the really good ones. Fortune 50 banks, no secret, you go to their security operations center, they have morning stand-ups, they have there's real-time communication or near-time real communication. There's practitioners on the teams. There's really good understanding of how do you respond to things, and they exercise. So it is very similar to how we did in the military, and I think companies can learn a lot from that way of doing business. That's really what I like to share with companies. Usually, what I'm seeing is smaller companies. Cybersecurity is like a side gig or additional duty.
Mm-hmm.
Where, if you think about it, though, it requires practitioner depth expertise to do it effectively.
Right.
So I think it can't be a side gig or a side hustle for someone.
Yeah. So they're not taking it seriously enough, or they're not allocating enough resources, or.
Right. That's exactly right. I see that a lot. So dedicated personnel, operationalizing, I think those are all keys that I brought with me and try to implement that where I go.
Okay. So you sort of given us some ways, and maybe you can expand on this, but what are some ways that the private sector could or should adopt security practices used by the military? And then maybe on the other side of the coin, are there things that the private sector does or enterprise does really well that might have something to teach, DoD or the military?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. I mentioned about the proactive approach, so I won't harp on that one too much. One that I think is very helpful is think of your enterprise is constantly under duress. Someone's always trying to get in, whether it's a sophisticated adversary or someone that has scripts running or scans running looking for vulnerabilities. But that is always going on. It is not like I live out in a wooded lot. No one's knocking on my door every day. But if I lived in a neighborhood, I'd probably see more activity, right? So on the internet, if you open up if you open a firewall and just watch the traffic, I mean, it's constant scanning, automated scanning, exploit attempts. I mean, you name it. So most IT guys, if they would do that for more than a few minutes, they would also see that there's massive attempts all day long to try to get in. A lot of them are dropped by different security controls, but just take it, consider that you're constantly under duress, and pick up the op tempo and proactiveness on how you defend the network. That doesn't mean panicking. That just means like, hey, this thing is being attacked and we need to try to defend it. That's one of the key takeaways. Having resourcing, like projecting resources up to a board, I think is important. So I've had the privilege of briefing a few boards over the last probably 6 years, and very few of them aren't talking about cyber now. They're generally asking, like, what should we do differently? And oddly enough, they really listen to people who come in and talk to the board, whereas some other people could be saying the same message, but it's just not resonating the same way. So it's good to come in and give a different perspective, or kind of reinforce what their team is telling them. So those things are definitely changing. One thing the private sector does very well is they keep deeper expertise and practitioners. In the military and even in the government, government agencies, there's quite a bit of expected promotion and moving on to the greater responsibility. There's like a nudge constantly. Hey, I've been here 2 years. Hey, I've been here 3 years. And you start looking, or your assignment managers like tapping you on the shoulder. Hey, it's time to go, Ken. We got this other opportunity for you. You're on the bigger and better things. So what I've seen with practitioners in the private sector is they get to stay a little longer. They get to really kind of hone their skills, and I like that. I've seen that quite a bit. Not everyone has to be a leader. Some people want to just be on the keyboard. They just want to be a developer or a red teamer.
Yeah, that's something we see sort of common with people who, find themselves suddenly in managerial roles and saying, I don't get to do the hands-on stuff anymore. But so what, like compared to, you said with military, there's, sort of a 2 to 3 year, thing before people are starting to look for, the next lily pad to jump to. But like comparatively speaking, what is the sort of average time in a position in more of a private sector job, like 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, so when I was at IronNet, we had developers that it was nothing for them to have 10 years coding in like a specific language or two. Yeah, some of the more, I don't know, the rise in some of the cybersecurity jobs, it's kind of hard to clearly say. But what I'm noticing, and people are wanting to specialize in offensive or defensive or some kind of instant response. So, on the offensive side, it could be red teaming, penetration testing, threat emulation. And then on the defensive side, it's like, hey, I want to take apart that malware. I want to try to catch these adversaries. And then on the instant response, it's like, what happened? So those are kind of formalizing themselves a bit. But then there's this whole other, I don't want to call it faction, but there's a whole nother, or building products.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're building products, you probably need some expertise in like software development, understanding threats. If you're doing red teaming, pen testing, you need the adversarial understanding, and how to emulate those things for companies and defenders. Right. And for the defensive side, you need a little bit of both of that to build, defend an organization. So I think the tides are kind of changing on people staying a little longer in those positions, but those have all came along in, roughly the last 10 years.
Right. Yeah. This is such a changing field for sure.
Really became prevalent. Right. So I think seeing those like stones starting to be set, the foundation starting to be set. And you're seeing some very deep practitioners now in those different specialties.
Yeah. So, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, not to beat up on the military, but one thing a lot of people forget is soldiers, they're part of a larger weapon system. They're a capability. Right. So, there's readiness standards, there's training outside of their job, there's mandatory training, mandatory fun that has nothing to do with their specialty. It's just as part of being a larger force for our country. So
right.
A lot of civilians don't necessarily have to compete with that. So it's a give and take, but I see the deeper expertise and more practitioners in the commercial, private sector.
Okay, that's interesting. So our goal with the podcast, is, as I mentioned before, is to walk newcomers and people who are wanting to make careers or position shifts and help them to see potential job titles in a new light. So we've been talking about this a little bit, but let's talk about some of the more active forms of security, specifically red teaming, threat hunting, penetration testing, threat emulation. So what drew you to this area of interest? Obviously, the military, sort of brought you into this, but what are in your mind some of the most important skills, experiences, certs, et cetera, that you should have to excel in these types of fields? Like, if you want to get into this, where do you start?
Yes, so that's a whole lot to digest.
Sure.
So I think I took a great interest in understanding adversaries before I went to the SWA Cyber Center in Kuwait. I got to be honest, I don't know how I ever defended networks or helped ran teams to defend networks, because
how's that?
Just not knowing the sophistication that adversaries operate with.
Wow. Yeah.
Some of them are very well organized, very well funded. You have nation state capabilities, state sponsored capabilities. So when I got a little bit of exposure to that, it really kind of perked my interest. I want to learn more. I always thought that a lot of adversaries just they got access to credentials and then that was it, right? But to be honest, it's so much more than that. So let me touch here on one of your points. Defenders, you kind of have to follow rules. You build a network, you follow a framework, you have to implement compliance. Adversaries don't have to do that.
Right.
They find whatever least path of resistance, their foothold that they're given, and they run with it. So they can be very dynamic. Defenders really have to focus more on larger breadth of capabilities and you know, so I think understanding that has really helped me. And then I took interest in wanting to be able to do that myself, like the red teaming aspect of it. But there, you know, I've gotten to the point with the red teaming under penetration testing. How do you give that to a customer where they can actually do something actionable with it?
Oh yeah.
So I really like, because that's really why we're all here, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're here to defend companies and, you know, protect our government infrastructure, protect, you know, our organizations from cyber attacks. So does that answer your question, Chris? I know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I guess I'm trying to think of like, if you're currently, you know, help desking, or you're cyber, you know, a cyber security analyst, or you're somewhere sort of lower, like what are some of the things, you know, and it sort of ties into my next question, but like, let's sort of like think about it in terms of, you know, you're just getting into security and this sounds intriguing, but you don't really know, because they, you know, all these are related, but they're different. Red teaming is different from penetration testing, is different from incident response from blue teaming, and so forth. So like, how do you sort of like parse out what you do and what you like to do, you know, versus which of the things that you like doing would be right for you, and then sort of how do you go sort of chase after that thing? You know, obviously, you know, because you were in the military, you had this great sort of natural support system around you of, you know, we want you to do this and we have the training for you. But if you're sort of having to be go on a self initiative and say red teaming sounds great, but how do I get from, you know, me reading log files here to, you know, doing something as sort of advanced as that? Like what would you recommend?
Sure, I'm sure you hear this a bit, but who are the industry leaders in some of those things? You know, that's kind of, you know, I had the good fortune to meet Dave Kennedy from Trusted Sec. I think it was maybe back in 2012 when things were just starting to get off the ground. DerbyCon had ran a couple years, and you know, I asked him many questions. You know, he made a great transition from the Marine Corps and government sector, and so finding a mentor. He's very active on social media. Well, I shouldn't say oddly enough. Surprisingly enough, most of these folks are very approachable.
Yeah, I found that too. A lot of the sort of, you know, industry leaders we've talked to all freely hand out their LinkedIn file or profile or their social. It's like, just get in touch with me. I'm happy to talk to you.
I mean, I think for most people, if they were to reach out to, you know, someone like Ed Scotus at SANS and Tim Medine and you know, some of the prominent instructors or cybersecurity leaders, they'd be delightfully surprised. They'd probably get a response that day, whether it's Twitter, whether it's on LinkedIn. So, you know, reaching out and finding a mentor and kind of asking those questions. I think you know, one of the things that was very helpful for me when I was getting ready to, well, I shouldn't say when I was getting ready to retire, but when I moved here to Maryland and I was at Fort Meade assigned to the NSA, it was conferences, local conferences, you know, ISSA meetings, you know, jumping into those things and really going in with an open mind and observing initially, and then starting to narrow the focus on what interests you. When I was doing more IT, those things weren't really prevalent. Most IT conferences I'd go to, someone's trying to sell us something.
Mm-hmm.
I go to some of the very specific cybersecurity conferences, is people pouring their heart into the community, providing talks, providing their research, releasing tools on GitHub, and then being available. I could literally go to a cybersecurity conference or cybersecurity meetup every day of the week if I wanted to,
right?
Especially where I'm at here. So jumping on social media and getting out there and talking with folks, I think is a really good way to do that.
Okay, so in thinking especially of the sort of more, like I say, aggressive or you know, the offensive security things, the red teams, the penetration tests, whatever, what are some type of activities that you should really enjoy doing on a daily basis if you're thinking of these type of careers? Because, you know, it might be, you know, you might be imagining, well, I'm just going to go out there and I'm just going to, you know, go, you know, dig around and I'm going to solve all these things and I'm going to break into this and break into that. But like, there's a lot of report writing to do. There's a lot of sort of communication with the client. Like, what are some of the main sort of chunks of work that you have to do that you should really be like cool with doing a lot of that? And, what are some of the surprising fun things, but also some of the surprising like downsides of these types of jobs?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So, I was fortunate to come in. Well, I don't know if you call it fortune, but I came into cybersecurity like mid-career.
Okay.
So some of the opportunities I could steer, or I could voice my concerns. Hey, I really want to do that. I want to do this. Hey, I want to go on this path in my career, and mentors would kind of help me set a path and go in that direction. But I think you're referring to specialization a bit here, right?
Right.
So almost all of the things we've discussed today, so red teaming, blue teaming, incident response, hunting, all of those, even within each of those, there's specializations.
Sure.
So getting good, listen to me, having a great understanding or depth in specific things is necessary to contribute to these teams. For instance, blue teaming, generally there's someone with deep expertise in Windows systems, Active Directory. There's generally someone who's got really good experience or depth in Unix or Linux, and then infrastructure and I would say everything else, OT or IoT. So
right.
Finding a little specialty, finding some things you're passionate about within the type of proactive cybersecurity you want to do, I think is the start. And then plotting, of course, how do you become good at that?
Right.
For instance, with red teaming, we had guys that were very focused on initial access. Like their drive was, how do I get initial access?
Okay.
How do I phish a user? How do I use an exploit? How do I social engineer someone?
Yep.
How do I do a physical intrusion into an environment? So find that passion, which of those components of red team, blue teaming, hunting, instant response, like really draws you in, and then see how you.
Since you're going to be on a team anyway, it behooves you to sort of be the person on the team that's known for doing this one thing and doing it really well.
Yep. Most of these are, I shouldn't say most, all of these are team sports.
Right.
They're not individual operations or capabilities.
Yeah. Yeah. So since we're talking about these sort of methods of learning how to break into systems, I want to talk some about the capture the flag competitions that you compete in. Do you compete in solo or as teams? These are also team sports, I assume?
So I initially, just because I think we all suffer from a bit of imposter syndrome.
Oh yeah.
You'll hear that a lot in cybersecurity, and it's pretty prevalent, right? You don't want to go in a meeting and say something and prove everyone right. You know what I mean? So things like, so I think everyone suffers from it. So I was a little bit nervous on things, and so I had to dabble as an individual initially. And also I came in mid-career. So, I had a lot of catching up to do, like very, very deep, I wasn't good at coding initially. I didn't understand all these different types of encryption or capabilities. So I had to learn those on the fly. So I started off competing in individual events, and not all of them were red in nature. Some of them were crypto challenges. Some of them were defend the flag, or capture flag and then defend it as well. So some of them were task oriented. Some of them were like there's a trail that a storyline that you had to follow. So oftentimes it was good to go as an individual to those. Later on, when we started doing more exercises in the military, or even in the government, things like Cyber Flag or Cyber Guard, those are well published cyber exercises done. I really enjoyed like more of the team concept to it. So we would use that for CTFs as well. We had the Presidential Cup, and that's a big one that was just in the news. We did the Army Cyber Skills Challenge, where we invited pretty much anyone in the Army to come compete in this. Did them here in local chapters, and really in conferences is where I've done the most.
Okay.
I would say almost every B-sides, regional B-sides conference has a CTF that someone brings along or creates. I really like going to the CTFs down at CarolinaCon. They seem to have a pretty interesting every year. DerbyCon always has it. And of course, the larger conferences, they have multiple conferences. Also, if you can get into a SANS class, usually day 5 and 6 has a CTF or an exercise. It's really cool, and it has there's a competitive nature to those things.
Okay. So, again, sort of moving it back even more sort of toward a remedial level, if you're interested in this kind of thing, but you don't necessarily want to go to a conference to do, capture the flags and stuff, are there sort of free ones or sort of things online that you can do? One of our articles on our regular articles on our website is one of our authors will break apart a decommissioned, hack the box tutorial and things like that. Are there things like that you can go, out online and sort of dip your toe in before you sort of like take yourself out to, one of these big conferences and then find out that you're not quite ready yet?
Yeah, definitely Hack the Box. I like Hack the Box. Most of my guys, they have a profile on there. The Hacker One, that's another one.
Okay.
Hacker One, they generally publish bug bounties. You go sign up, and you get aligned to a project, and then you see if you can penetrate or find a vulnerability. I like that. Also, this wasn't around early on, but the CTFtime.org or .org, they generally have an event list on there, and you can see all these capture the flag events that are going on. I really like the rise of the Pen Test Academy. I think initially I didn't know that I don't know. It just kind of popped up and I didn't really pay attention to it because we had opportunities with SANS and all the local conferences. So I went back to it and I'm like, wow, I'm pretty impressed with this. And also, stuff off Phone Hub, pulling down binaries and watching how people have exploited them. I think that's a good start.
Okay. Can you give me any examples of some of the more interesting CTF puzzles that you were able to solve? Are there any brain bogglers that made you shake your head with admiration in their complexity that you could sort of share with us?
It's been starting this business unit at Violite, and it's EmberSec. The last year has been a little slow for CTFs for me personally, but my guys have continued competing in them. But at DerbyCon, there was a guy that used to bring these coins. I wish I could tell you his name. I was looking for it before we joined the podcast, but he would come with like a Pelican case full of these crypto challenges, coins, and it would have, interesting enough, around the coin, if you flipped it to the side, you would see something in binary or something that's encoded.
Oh yeah.
And you'd have to break that encryption, and then there were different phases, and then it might be something like I decoded this, and I went out to this website because it provided the URL, or it provided some clue, and you went out to that URL, and the plot thickened, right? Next thing you know, there was a couple websites, and then there was a thing off this site you had to decode, and so I really like that crypto challenge. I wish I'd have done more of the crypto ones because there were times on intrusions where I would have a string of characters or something we'd pull out of memory or pull it off a hard drive, some kind of artifact or out of network traffic. And being that I wasn't like well seasoned in reversing or decryption or these crypto challenges, now I look back in hindsight, it kind of set me back a little. So you don't know how you're going to apply that later on,
right?
Like from the challenge, but I really enjoyed that one. And then last year, within last year, I went to the AWS's Reinforce in Boston, and there were several. They were like CTFs and crypto challenge built into one. It was pretty clever. You got some clues, and you had to go over to a booth. so they did some coordination. So I went over to a booth and they gave me a T-shirt, and I took that T-shirt and I had to overlay something from another booth.
Oh, wow.
And then I had to overlay it on the T-shirt. Then I had to count some of the characters within there, and that formed a string. And I took that string, and we had to do some rot 13. We had to flip bits around, and then we had to code that. That was pretty clever. Obviously those are conferences, and those aren't straight CTFs.
Right.
I think the ones that I was seeing at DeVry and the B-sides are by far the ones I enjoy the most. But the crypto challenges, those really, you got to leverage expertise around you and really go deep. Also, I like the blend of trivia that gets put into these, so it adds a bit of an adventure to it. One of the things my family and I did, we were down in the Riviera Maya a couple of months ago, and we had an opportunity to go to an escape room.
Right.
And the escape room was mostly IT or cybersecurity built. So, there were things that, it was a Christmas theme, but, things are like the order of the lights in the room. What colors were they? What orders were there? How many were there?
Wow.
We had to, we were in there for a long time. So we had to take these things out, observe them. And then, there was a couple we had to get on the computer and you go do something. So those are cool too. I mean, escape rooms can be all over the place, but
of course, yeah.
The ones, if you can find an escape room as a group, it has like a cybersecurity flair to it. They're a lot of fun.
Wow, that's really cool. Yeah. I had never thought of it as a possibility, but it makes perfect sense when you think about it. I was as you were describing the sort of almost scavenger hunt like nature of some of those conferences where you're getting this shirt and overlaying it with this shirt, I was like, that sounds like an escape room, or like I say, a scavenger hunt or something. So it's kind of cool in that regard. So just sort of wrapping up here a little bit, tell me about the Cyber Patriot Program. What do you do as part of the program, and what is it about really?
Yeah, so the Cyber Patriot Program is a really cool program that the Air Force stood up.
Okay.
I think it was the Air Force Cyber Association, if I recall. And what they do is, they're just trying to bring cybersecurity and STEM, like in STEM programs in high schools and middle schools, to more awareness, more exposure to kids at a younger age. So what they do is they have these rounds of competitions, but before you do the rounds of competitions, they have lessons, materials that the technical mentors and the coaches teach the students on. So my team, we were able to be the technical mentor for underserved girls school.
Mm-hmm.
So we went there every week. We would teach the material, obviously, but then we would bring in our experiences, in our careers and show how that's applicable and what that can lead to later on. And, if they stay the course in either computer science or computer engineering, any kind of STEM related program. And then, we would form the group, and then we would actually compete in the challenges that Cyber Patriot puts out. And then, it's a really neat program because they provide virtual machines that the coaches pull down, and they have challenges and lessons that you walk through with the students. So it really exposes them at an early level. Because, it's one thing to go through school and learn the academic side of cybersecurity. It's another to see the practical application. So I really like Cyber Patriot for that. It has gotten to be a very large event. I mean, they have sponsorship through Microsoft and the Microsoft Imagine program. So any coach, any student that's participating in this, they get access to Microsoft licensing and lots of virtual machines and really exposure at a young age to technical experts in the industry. Really grab and hold to mentors early on to help them. So I still keep in touch with a lot of the kids that I've helped with it at the schools. They're asking me how to navigate college now. They're asking me, should I take this course? Hey, do you know about this conference? Or hey, I'm here this weekend. Is there anyone that I can catch up with? So what's come out of the program, I really like the more active involvement with the community.
So if you're a student or educator and you want to get your school involved in the Cyber Patriot program, do you know how to sort of like put yourself on the map for this?
Yes, absolutely. So you would go to the Cyber Patriot website, and there you can, someone has to administer the program at the school, obviously.
Sure.
Usually that's who's ever in charge of the STEM club or the computer science or technology piece. Different schools, different capabilities, right? Usually someone there has to take ownership of that and then become the coach. And then you sign up for the program and then you get access to all the materials. And it takes off very quickly once the school reaches out. You'll get there's a whole database of folks that you'll get access to where you can request, hey, can you be a coach for us? Can you be a technical mentor for these few days? So it happens very quickly.
So as we wrap up today, where do you see the work that you do specifically, sort of offensive and defensive security, going in the next several years? Can you sort of predict the methods that threat hunting and other forms of defense strengthening are, going in terms of new technologies or methodologies that are coming up in the future?
Sure. So I spent some significant time thinking about this because my career has taken some pretty sharp turns. I would say every 3 to 4 years. So one thing is consistent, what I'm seeing is a rise in products. You've probably seen that chart of logos that says, here's all the companies that are vying for your business.
Right.
Technology. I mean, a bunch of logos. And I think one of the biggest issues we had with keeping up with adversaries, as far back as 15 years ago, was just be able to automate the detection of them. And so obviously you're probably hearing this a bit, but the rise in AI, machine learning, behavioral analytics, that's going to help defenders keep up and businesses, continue continuity of operations.
Right.
But a lot of those products right now are nice to have, not must have.
Okay.
A lot of the blocking and tackling that organizations should be doing, the things that you see in the the CIS top 20 NIST framework. If you do those things, you raise the cost of the adversary. But adversaries have gotten so sophisticated that now we need more help. And you still need a human to interpret these things, but these products are where I see the rise. IoT is on the rise. I think I was counting the other day, I had about 60 devices in my house, that are pulling an IP address. And I think maybe a third of those devices in my house no longer have software support. The company has went out of business. So I think we're going to see more problems with IoT. Mobile devices, and I know you're probably seeing a lot is in operational technology, so ICS SCADA. That those environments are under duress. Only way we're going to keep up with that is by using machine learning and AI, and then tracking those observables, and enriching that with intelligence, not a human interpreting, but it being baked right into those products or capabilities. I think
it's not an either or. It's a collaborative experience.
Right. You're still going to need all the traditional blocking and tackling.
Right.
But I think that's really what's going to change the tides a bit, because right now defenders are having a very difficult time keeping up with the offensive side of the house.
Yeah. Need all hands on deck. Okay, so one last question today. If our listeners want to know more about BioLite or Ken Jenkins, where can they go online to learn more?
Yeah, so we have a website that we've stood up. Is embercybersecurity.com. We have a blog on there. Our guys are pretty active. We have a couple of security researchers. We have some compliance guys. We're really taking off with that piece, and then obviously follow the EmberSec LinkedIn site and our Twitter site at EmberSec at Ember_sec. We're really kind of, we're really kind of focusing more on community outreach and helping to get the word out on some of the things we're interested in helping.
Awesome. Ken Jenkins, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I appreciate your time.
And thank you all for listening and watching today. If you enjoyed today's video, you can find many more on our YouTube page. Just go to youtube.com and type in Cyberwork with Infosec to check out our collection of tutorials, interviews, and past webinars. If you'd rather have us in your ears during your workday, all of our videos are also available as audio podcasts. Just search Cyberwork with Infosec in your favorite podcast catcher. Thanks once again to Ken Jenkins, and thank you all again for watching and listening. We will speak to you next week.